Our spokespeople today are Kathy Fox, TSB Chair, and Clifford Harvey, Director of Marine Investigations. Madam Fox will give a brief statement in English and French and will be then available to take some questions. Madame Fox fera une brève déclaration en anglais et en français, puis répondra aux questions. I will now pass the floor to Madam Fox.
Can we just take one moment to fix this for somebody?
No problem.
That's
I'll try and use my outside voice, but I don't want it to sound too much. Okay. I was an air traffic controller. I'm used to having a mic. Sure. My name is Kathy Fox, and I'm the chair of the Transportation Safety Board of Canada, or TSB. So good afternoon. This morning, the Transportation Safety Board of Canada, or TSB, has started the safety investigation into a marine occurrence with fatalities involving the Canadian vessel Polar Prince. At the time of the occurrence, the vessel was involved with the operation of a submersible known as the Titan, which has been reported to have suffered a catastrophic implosion, leading to the presumed deaths of the 5 people on board. I'd like to express my sincere condolences to the families and friends of those who have lost loved ones. The TSB is Canada's independent federal investigation agency whose sole mandate is to advance transportation safety by conducting independent investigations into transportation occurrences in the air, marine, pipeline, and rail sectors of transportation. Our mandate is to find out what happened and why, and to find out what needs to change to reduce the chance or the risk of such occurrences in the future. Very important, it is not the function of the board to assign blame or determine civil or criminal responsibility. Now this morning, TSB investigators boarded the Polar Prince to examine and document the vessel, to collect information from the vessel's voyage data recorder and other vessel systems that contain useful information. We have also begun conducting interviews with the people aboard the vessel. At this point, we are not in a position to provide specific details about the occurrence or about the investigation that are not already in the public domain. But we will answer your questions with respect to our mandate, our jurisdiction, and our processes, to the extent that we are able to do so. Je vais maintenant procéder avec un court résumé en français. Encore bon après-midi. Ce matin, le Bureau de la sécurité des transports du Canada, le BST, a entamé l'enquête de sécurité de transport maritime sur l'événement mortel mettant en cause le navire Polar Prince. Au moment de l'événement, le navire participait à l'exploitation du submersible Titan, qui aurait subi une implosion catastrophique menant à la mort présumée des 5 personnes à bord. Je tiens à exprimer nos condoléances sincères aux familles et aux amis qui ont perdu des êtres qui leur sont chers. Le BST est un organisme fédéral indépendant dont le mandat est de promouvoir la sécurité dans les 4 modes de transport régis par le gouvernement fédéral, c'est-à-dire aérien, maritime, pipelinier et ferroviaire. Nous le faisons en menant des enquêtes sur des événements de transport choisis. Nous le faisons en menant des enquêtes sur des événements de transport choisis dans le but de comprendre ce qui s'est passé et pourquoi cet événement s'est produit, afin que des mesures soient prises pour réduire le risque que des accidents similaires se produisent. Le Bureau n'est pas habilité à attribuer ni à déterminer les responsabilités civiles ou pénales. Ce matin, des enquêteurs du BST sont montés à bord le Polar Prince pour examiner et documenter le navire et pour récupérer des données de l'enregistreur des données du voyage et d'autres systèmes qui pourraient contenir des informations utile. Nous avons également commencé à interviewer les personnes à bord du navire. À ce moment, nous ne pouvons pas fournir des détails spécifiques, des informations sur l'événement, à part celles qui sont déjà disponibles dans le domaine public. Ceci dit, on répondrait à vos questions dans la mesure du possible concernant notre mandat, notre juridiction et nos processus, nos procédures. Merci. We're ready to take your questions. I would ask one at a time. Yes. So what I can tell you is vessels of this size are required to have a voyage data recorder which records audio that's on the bridge. The content of those voice recordings could be useful in our investigation, but the contents are privileged under Canadian law, and therefore we can't share what the voice recordings will say. They are protected.
Can you tell us
Yes.
Can you tell us generally what questions you have about the role the Polar Prince may have played in this disaster?
I'm going to ask Mr. Cliff Harvey to respond. Mr. Harvey is the Director of Investigations for Marine. It's under his authority that this investigation is being conducted. So any questions specific to the investigation, to the extent we can share, he will answer. But go ahead.
All right, thanks, Kathy. So, as Ms. Fox said, we're looking at all the circumstances surrounding the 5 individuals who were on board the Polar Prince who didn't return with the vessel when it came back to Canada. So that's in all aspects of the circumstance of their loss.
Can you give us a sense of the mood?
What?
Sorry, there's one question over here, and then I'll come back to you, sir.
Olivier Moni, Paris Match, French magazine.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Can you please give us a sense of the mood? You interviewed the crew members. I mean, how did they feel? What was the mood? Of course, they were probably it was a very difficult time. Can you give us a sense of how they were? And also, were there family members on the boat, on the Polar Prince?
There are family members on the ship. I'm not going to share the content of any interviews because just like voice recordings, the content of witness interviews are protected under Canadian law. So we're not going to share anything from those interviews. But I think anybody can imagine that it's difficult, the circumstances they've been under for the last few days, and we have to understand that that's going to affect particularly the families who've lost loved ones. I'll stop there. Sorry, sir, you had a question over there. Yeah.
One, the sled, why is it significant? Why was it toted separately? And 2, has the personnel on board the Polar Prince been allowed to leave, including the family?
As we said, like the operation to bring in the sled that was brought in, that was brought in as part of the rescue mission. I understand that is part of our investigation as well. We were looking at that. Secondly, as well, our investigators have worked very, very diligently to be able to facilitate the crew members or the passengers, or the individuals on board, to be able to leave the vessel. So as we're completing our interviews and with them, those individuals, we're allowing them a chance to leave.
Can you tell us what's happening?
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sorry, we'll try and get around to multiple. But if I could just add one thing, we always occasionally will have a requirement for follow-up interviews, and that may occur. But yeah, the idea was to do what we needed to immediately, and then allow people to leave after a long time at sea. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Can you tell me to what extent whether your mandate stretches to the operation and the design of the submersible Titan, how it was used over the last few days leading up to the catastrophic implosion? Can you go there? Can you investigate the company and the way it was used?
And as I said, we're looking at all aspects of this occurrence, including any vessels that were used involved in the occurrence, the registration, the construction, the ownership. Right, this part of the investigation now, it's very preliminary, and but we really are looking at, as I said, all aspects of the investigation, including other crimes.
Nothing is off the table for you. You can go anywhere you want with this investigation.
as I was saying, in accordance with our national legislation, yes, we're looking at all aspects of this marine occurrence where there's a presumed loss of life of individuals who were on board the Polar Prince.
Can you tell me, the RCMP, the Canadian Mounted Police, have a news conference scheduled for about an hour from now. How does your investigation meld with theirs?
The completely separate, completely independent investigations. The RCMP conducts their activities for a totally different mandate. Our mandate is to investigate from a safety perspective, identify what happened, why, and what can be done to reduce the risk of it happening in the future. Ma'am in the back. So I presume you're talking about the U.S. Coast Guard? Yes. So different agencies have different mandates, different jurisdictions, different objectives in investigations. And perhaps, Cliff, you can just explain how when there is a major marine occurrence involving multiple states, then there is a mechanism to collaborate and to share factual information amongst the various agencies to the extent permitted within our legislation. As I mentioned, there are certain things, certain data, for example, voice recordings, witness statements that are protected under Canadian legislation. But we conduct our interviews and our gathering of information independently of anyone else.
What's the status of the retrieval of the pieces of the Titan? Who's involved in that? Is that going on out at sea?
So we're not involved in that particular aspect. I think that question would best be directed to the U.S. Coast Guard, who was the lead agency in the search and rescue and now recovery mission.
How long do you think your investigation will take? And ultimately, do you expect to be able to answer the question of what caused this implosion?
Our investigations we take the time we need to do a thorough investigation. And we're in the early stages, and we need to scope out the lines of inquiry. Typically, our investigations can take 18 months to 2 years. We obviously try and do them quicker because we know everybody wants answers, particularly the family, the public, etc. But we need to take the time. With respect to how far we will go, that remains to be seen as we gather information. So it's still too early to tell. Sorry again.
CNN.
Yeah.
You.
Yeah.
So earlier today, Horizon Maritime told us that 14 crew members returned on the Polar Prince. We're looking for some clarity on numbers. We were told that there were 24 people on board plus 17 crews. That would bring the total to 41. Can you tell us exactly how many people arrived back on the Polar Prince today and the breakdown of crew members and other people on the ship?
Yeah, sure. As you mentioned, yes, 41 individuals did leave the vessel when the vessel departed St. John's. As I mentioned earlier as well, five of those individuals are presumed they're missing and they're presumed deceased. When the vessel returned today, there were 17 crew members on board, and as you mentioned, other personnel on board as well, similar to what had left, minus those individuals.
Nobody's left the boat yet.
Go ahead.
Nobody's left the vessel yet. As I said earlier, we've undertaken our interviews with the individuals on board, and once we're done with our interviews, then we're not detaining those individuals from actually leaving the vessel or leaving.
Have you received full cooperation?
Yes, I would say that we've received full cooperation. It's been a really good interaction thus far, and it's really getting full cooperation with all the individuals involved to date. Yes.
So just so I'm clear, the
One and
people,
then you. Go ahead.
just to follow up on her question, that total number, does that include family members who traveled out from here, or do those family members board today?
Maybe I would just caution that those are some of the things that we need to validate. So we have preliminary numbers, which Cliff has shared. We'll validate all that in terms of crew versus other occupants that were on the vessel. But what's clear is that there were 5 that were on the vessel that left here some time ago, and 5 did not return. Who did not return? That's clear. So I just don't want to give you a number today and then find out, oh well, we missed 1 or 2 or whatever. But just to clarify that. Yes, ma'am. So in terms of what's happening today, we are conducting a safety investigation in Canada, given that this was a Canadian flagged vessel that departed a Canadian port and was involved in this occurrence, albeit in international waters. Other agencies may choose to conduct investigations, and that's up to them, but there are provisions in the International Maritime Code for collaboration amongst agencies conducting parallel investigations in accordance with their mandate and their objectives. So whatever other agencies will do, you'd have to defer to the U.S. Coast Guard to ask what their plans are with respect to that. I think you had a second follow-up, and I'm sorry I missed it. Oh yeah, sorry, progress. Yeah, I can't guarantee when we'll have a more fulsome update, say in the coming days, but as we gather more information that we're able to release, we will share it. I can't commit to when we might provide a progress, because again, we have a lot of information to collect, a lot of people to interview, and then we have to validate that information and analyze it. So it could be a while, but if we can give an update the next few days, we certainly will strive to do that. We understand the international interest in this occurrence.
Just briefly, assuming the wreckage and what the debris would be key to your investigation in determining how this happened, who will take carriage of that? There's been some talk about the expense of getting that to the surface. Will the effort be focused on getting as much of the Titan to the surface?
Well, again, I think you'd have to ask the U.S. Coast Guard. They are still engaged in terms of the recovery of the wreckage on the ocean bottom. So I can't go beyond that. I mean, as Mr. Harvey said, our investigation will go where the evidence leads us, and we'll certainly pay attention to what other investigation agencies may be doing. But I can't commit one way or the other. But I know there's efforts underway to collect the recovery.
Just to clarify, you said that you're investigating this vessel because it's a Canadian flag ship. The submersible was not Canadian flag, as I understand it. So you are investigating that vessel too?
Well, we're investigating a marine occurrence that happened in international waters involving a Canadian flag vessel that departed from a Canadian port and that served as a support to that occurrence. So in the early stages of an investigation, we have to look at what we know and determine what will be the scope of our investigation. Are there other investigations going on? We don't want to duplicate efforts. We want to collaborate. At the end of the day, we all have a collective interest in finding out what happened and why. So I'll just stop there. Yes?
Are you able to tell us which family members are on board, as in from which,
No.
which men?
No, we would not release that information. We don't, and again, we would not identify the names of the individuals that we've investigated or that we've interviewed rather, because that's private information.
Not necessarily their names, just the men that they're related to. Any of the British people who were involved?
No, there may be other ways of getting that information, but we're not going to reveal who's on board the vessel or in terms of other occupants and who we may have interviewed or not.
Once you finish interviewing them, are they free
to
leave? You won't have to speak to them again immediately afterwards?
Again, bearing in mind the trauma, the difficult circumstances that families have been through, we made it a priority to engage with them earlier rather than later, but we may have follow-up interviews after the fact. We don't want to hold them on the vessel any longer than necessary. So, okay, I got 2 or 3 more questions, and then we'll. Yeah.
You mentioned this at the beginning. You mentioned the circumstances that are very difficult that everyone's gone through. Without getting into who people are and the privacy issues there, can you just give us a general sense of how people are doing, not just the people that were aboard this vessel, but also your team that now is tasked with trying to figure out?
I mean, first and foremost, our hearts go out to the individuals who are on the vessel, particularly any family members who've lost loved ones. There's no doubt that, particularly, as you can imagine, given the media stories that we were following about what was happening and the possibility, the potential for survival, that's tough. Our investigators are trained to conduct investigations that may involve trauma, death, etc. It can be hard on them, and we spend a lot of time at the TSB to provide mental health supports to our investigators and so on. So it's a challenging time, but we're at the early stages of this investigation. We want to get answers, and we look forward to providing it.
Do you provide mental health support on the crew members as well?
No, that is not the responsibility of the TSB. But our investigators are certainly trained in understanding that people who've been through a difficult experience, we need to deal with them carefully and compassionately, and so we're doing it. Okay, I got one more question, and then that's going to be it. Sorry, we got to get back to work.
Talk mostly about interviews, but is it fair to assume that anything that's pulled out of the ocean, taken back perhaps to Boston by the Coast Guard, that's stuff you'd like to see your investigators?
You want to?
As part of our investigation, yes, we will certainly be looking at any information that is made available to us, we'll be working with our international partners as well to share any factual information that we can in accordance with our national legislation. So similar to the other states' legislation as well.
Do you expect the interviews to go into the night?
Could you spell your name, please?
Sorry, thank you very much. This is all for today, and again, we'll keep you posted if we can do another update in the coming days, but we appreciate your patience and your interest. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Glenda Power, Director of Strategic Communications with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in Newfoundland and Labrador. Welcome to RCMP headquarters. Our spokesperson today is Superintendent Kent Osmond to my left, who will come to the podium shortly. Remarks today will be delivered in English, first by Superintendent Osmond, and then delivered in French by Donna Tuff, also to my left, who will move to the podium as well. After the statement is delivered in both English and French, Superintendent Osmond will take questions, but may be limited in his ability to respond. Please note, you've been escorted to this space in RCMP headquarters for the purpose of this event, and will be escorted out once we conclude. We ask that you not enter any other spaces of this building. I'll apologize right now that it's so incredibly warm here. It's probably the hottest day we've had in June, and our air conditioning is not working great. And thank you for the patience for the delayed start. Superintendent Osmond.
Good afternoon. I'm Superintendent Kent Osmond of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in Newfoundland and Labrador. Today, the RCMP initiated an examination of the circumstances that led to the deaths of the 5 individuals on board the submersible Titanic. A team of investigators has been established with the sole purpose of answering the question of whether or not a full investigation by the RCMP is warranted. Such an investigation will proceed only if our examination of the circumstances indicate criminal, federal, or provincial laws may possibly have been broken. It would have been inappropriate for the RCMP to initiate this action during the search and recovery efforts. Following the U.S. Coast Guard's announcement earlier this week that debris from the submersible was located and all 5 on board were presumed dead, we will now look at the circumstances that led to those deaths. No timeline has been established as to how long this examination will take, but our investigators are engaged and active in this matter as of this morning. Once a determination has been made as to whether or not a full investigation will be launched, we will provide an update at that time. I'm open to taking questions, but please note my responses may be limited due to the nature of the work we're now undertaking. Thank you.
What prompted you to decide to do this?
Sorry? Oh, yes, sir.
Bonjour, je suis Donna Tuff de la Gendarmerie royale du Canada à Terre-Neuve et Labrador avec le surintendant Kent Osmond et Glenda Power. Aujourd'hui, la GRC a entrepris d'examiner les circonstances ayant mené au décès des 5 personnes qui se trouvaient à bord du submersible Titan. On a établi une équipe d'enquêteurs à la seule fin de déterminer si une enquête approfondie de la GRC est justifiée. Une telle enquête aurait lieu uniquement si la GRC conclut qu'il est possible que l'on ait contrevenu à une loi criminelle, fédérale ou provinciale. Il aurait été inapproprié que la GRC entreprenne l'examen alors que l'opération de recherche et de sauvetage était encore en cours. Puisque la garde côtière des États-Unis a annoncé plus tôt cette semaine qu'on a trouvé des débris du submersible et que les 5 passagers sont présumés morts, nous allons maintenant examiner les circonstances ayant mené à leur décès. On ne sait pas combien de temps l'examen prendra, mais nos enquêteurs y travaillent activement depuis ce matin. Une mise à jour sera fournie lorsqu'on aura déterminé si une enquête approfondie sera entreprise ou non. On peut maintenant apprendre vos questions, mais n'oubliez pas que la nature de l'examen que nous menons pourrait m'empêcher de répondre à certaines questions.
Hello. Well, the RCMP has jurisdiction for off-sea deaths. It's very common for us to investigate deaths that occur offshore. So this was well within our mandate.
Will you be working alongside the TSB or the U.S. Coast Guard officials in this?
All the agencies that are involved have different mandates and different, I guess, investigational goals. But yes, we will be working with them. There will be junctures where our investigations will probably intersect for a certain amount, and we expect full cooperation between all agencies.
Do you investigate all deaths offshore, or is there something taken about distance?
We investigate all deaths offshore that are reportable deaths. So it's difficult to sort of get into, but certain deaths are reportable and others are not. But deaths where people go missing offshore, where there's a death that requires investigation offshore, yes, the RCMP assumes those investigations.
Is there any suspicion of any criminal activity at the moment?
There's no suspicion of criminal activity per se, but the RCMP is taking initial steps to assess whether or not we will go down that road eventually.
Negligence involved in your verdict?
Well, criminal negligence would, civil negligence would not. So that would be something that, if the facts warranted that we would assume an investigation towards that end, yes.
So can you just a little bit delineate what your mandate is? You said every agency has a mandate. What is it?
Well, the Transportation Safety Board, for example, is just that. It's safety. The RCMP investigates deaths that are of an unusual nature that need investigation. So ours would be to investigate the circumstances surrounding the deaths to determine if we should actually embark on a criminal investigation.
How long did that take?
Well, we had a team down at the waterfront this morning, and the investigation is going to be complex. We're going to have to rely on subject matter experts, and there's going to be significant interviewing, so I'm really reluctant to put a timeline on it right now.
A lot of us were up early thinking he was coming earlier. Should I assume that your investigators were waiting for the ship to come in?
I'm not sure if they were waiting, but they were down there early, I can tell you that. Yeah.
So
Sir.
there were family members aboard that vessel. Had your people made contact and spoken with them initially?
I don't want to speak to who was on the vessel and who specifically we've spoken to, but we have conducted some interviews there today, yes.
And a quick follow-up, how long do you expect this investigation?
It's too early to tell. It's going to be a complex investigation. There's going to be some heavy lifting. It's going to take some time.
Sir,
Yes.
what will you be looking at in this investigation? What sets you apart from the other agencies?
Well, the RCMP has nothing to do with the regulations, vessel certification, transportation safety, any of that. Our mandate is to look at the deaths and determine if anything contributed to their deaths that may lead us down a criminal path. Is that clear? Thanks.
I guess I would ask, we're trying to understand if you are conducting an investigation in order to determine whether a criminal investigation is it that you're looking for in the first place in order for that criminal investigation to take place?
So that's a good question. So 90% of the time, or even greater, when the RCMP responds to any kind of call for service, we already know that a criminal matter has occurred. Now we're investigating the what, who, why, and where. But in certain instances, we have an event, and we don't know if a criminal matter occurred, so we take preliminary investigative steps to determine if any of the elements of the offenses that might apply exist, and then we will make a determination on a path forward. Does that make sense?
Yes. Can you provide an example of what may lead you to that conclusion?
Well, I don't want to speculate on anything like that, but if we get into, if our inquiries lead us to believe that certain actions were taken or not taken, that to this gentleman's question may have been negligent, or what we believe we need to investigate that they could have been negligent, and that's, I don't want anybody to think that that's what we're saying, but that would be an example of that.
And that applies to the crew aboard the Polar Prince, as well as any other private citizen that may have been aboard the ship?
The investigation will be all-encompassing. We're going to look at all that, yes.
Sir, what sets this investigation apart? Is this anything you've ever, I know you have a vast history, but what sets this one apart?
I'm not sure I understand your question exactly.
How unique is this situation?
Well, I mean, I've been doing police work for 33 years. This is a very unique circumstance, partly because of the jurisdictional issues, partly because, you know, of the prolonged uncertainty, the specifics and the expertise that went into the vessel, the voyage, all that needs to be understood by us. So it's a very unique circumstance.
Yeah, I guess, like, with respect to the jurisdictional issues, if you found that there was a criminal case, say, a criminal case against, say, the owners of Titan was warranted, would that be prosecuted in Canada, or would you send that to authorities in the United States?
I would be reticent to speculate on that right now because there's so many outcomes that could occur. One of which is that we're not going to do a full investigation. So I really don't want to speculate on that. The jurisdictional issues, they're complex on the high seas, so it would be something that we would have to sort out as we went.
Is the lack of any sort of bodies in this scenario a challenge to you in your preliminary investigation?
I guess in terms of any investigation, the more evidence you have, then the better your investigation will be, or I guess less complicated. So in that sense, yes, that's unfortunate, but at the same time, that really is the outcome. We're investigating what led up to that. So it would be less of a hindrance in this case, I think, than most. Thank you.